Welcome to my boring history sleep channel, where the past becomes a lullaby. Tonight, we'll wander slowly through forgotten stories, told softly, so you can drift into calm rest while history keeps you company. The year is 1905, and the night settles gently over an Edwardian town. The streets grow quiet, cobblestones glistening faintly from a recent drizzle. Horses' hooves clatter in the distance, their echoes fading into the hush of lamplight. The world, though restless with the heartbeat of industry and invention, seems to exhale as families withdraw into their homes. And those homes, though rich in charm, though filled with the wonders of modern progress, hold secrets, silent dangers waiting in shadows that families will learn to endure. Step with me into one of these homes. Front door opens with the creak of iron hinges, and immediately you sense a difference from the world outside. The air is warm, tinged with the sharp bite of coal smoke and the sweetness of polish rubbed into the wooden furniture. The flicker of a gas lamp spreads its glow across the entry hall, painting shadows along the wallpaper, ornate, patterned with curling leaves and blossoms that seem almost alive in the trembling light. A mother's footsteps approach, her skirt rustling softly against the carpet. She moves with a sense of pride, for this is not just a house but a showcase of progress. Everything within these walls has been chosen carefully, with a belief that the future has arrived. The Edwardian era was a world balanced between tradition and innovation. It followed the long reign of Queen Victoria, a reign that had stretched across most of the 19th century, and with Edward Roman VII on the throne, a new mood spread. There was optimism, energy, and a hunger for comfort. Inventions flooded the market, each one promising to improve the lives of ordinary people. The home, once lit only by flickering candles or smoky oil lamps, now glowed with gaslight. Rooms once cold and drafty now radiated with warmth from iron coal stoves. Walls once plain or damp were covered in richly patterned wallpapers. For families of the time, these were not luxuries alone, but symbols that the world was changing, that life was becoming easier, healthier, brighter. And yet, beneath the beauty, beneath the promise of progress, there lurked hazards that few recognized until tragedy forced them to. As the family settles for the evening, the father removes his coat and hat, setting them carefully by the door. He moves into the parlor, where a heavy fire grate glows with red coals. The children sit near the hearth, their cheeks flushed with warmth, their shadows dancing across the walls. Above them, the gas lamp hisses softly. It seems harmless, almost comforting in its steady glow, but unseen, it releases faint whispers of gas into the air. Too much of it, too long a leak, and sleep could easily turn into silence. The family does not know this fully, not yet, but they have learned small habits, cracking open a window for air, leaving one lamp burning instead of many, treating this new marvel with respect that borders on fear. Outside the window, neighbors live in similar caution. Across the narrow street, another home hums with life. A maid moves quickly from room to room, tending to lamps, her fingers stained with soot. She knows the danger of gas jets left open. She has heard stories of entire households overcome in the night. And so, she checks again, careful, precise, repeating the ritual that has saved many. Survival in the Edwardian world is not born from ignorance but from careful adaptation, from quiet routines that become second nature. The house, though warm, is not entirely safe. Each object, each convenience, carries with it a hidden risk. Yet the Edwardian family does not live in fear. Instead, they live with a kind of resilience, an acceptance that progress requires vigilance. And so they move through their evenings with care. The father reads a newspaper by the glow of the lamp, the mother sews with steady hands, and the children whisper together, their voices soft like birds in the dusk. From the outside, it looks like peace, From within, it is peace balanced on fragile ground. Beyond this home, across cities and towns, the Edwardian world is alive with the hum of change. Factories churn out new products daily. Advertising fills the papers with promises of convenience, and shop windows gleam with marvels never before imagined. Electric bulbs are beginning to appear, though only in the wealthiest homes. For most, gas remains the lifeblood of evening light. It is both a gift and a gamble, a blessing and a curse. Families, eager to embrace progress, rarely turn away. They adapt, they learn, they whisper warnings to one another. In this way, they endure, and endurance is at the heart of this time. Imagine walking through an Edwardian street at night. Lamps line the pavement, their glow uneven but soft. Shadows stretch along brick walls. Children's toys lie forgotten by doorsteps, and the scent of coal smoke lingers in the air. Behind every window, a story unfolds. Families gathering, inventions glowing, dangers waiting quietly. Yet life continues. Families laugh, share meals, dream of tomorrow, and tomorrow always comes, even if not without scars. In some homes, wallpaper glows green with rich color, admired by visitors for its freshness. Few suspect that arsenic hides in the very pigment. In other homes, stoves burn brightly, but a spark too strong could reduce an entire room to cinders, and still the rhythm of life carries on. Mothers tuck their children into bed, whispering prayers for their safety. Fathers check the lamps once more before sleep. Every gesture, every habit becomes a safeguard, a quiet act of survival. It is easy, from our world today, to imagine the Edwardians as unaware, blindly walking into danger. But in truth, they were deeply aware, often more cautious than we give them credit for. They lived in a world of marvels and menaces alike, where beauty often disguised peril, and they endured not by denying these risks, but by weaving survival into the very fabric of daily life. So picture this moment. The family, now gathered in silence, listens to the faint tick of the clock on the mantel. The gas lamp hums, the coal fire crackles, the children yawn, and the night deepens. Danger may linger in every corner, but so does resilience, so does the quiet determination to live, to protect, to survive. This is the essence of the Edwardian home, a place where progress and peril walked hand in hand, and where families, through watchfulness and care, found a way to endure. And as the night stretches on, the city falls deeper into quiet. Only the faint glow of lamps marks the presence of life. Within each home, families sleep, not entirely safe, but not entirely afraid either. For they have learned the balance, and they trust it. They close their eyes, not knowing what tomorrow's inventions will bring, but holding to the hope that progress, though dangerous, will carry them forward. The Edwardian home, then, is not just a building. It is a stage where modernity plays out in flickers of light and shadows of risk. It is where laughter mingles with caution, where beauty hides poison, where convenience courts catastrophe. And it is where families, ordinary, unremarkable, yet extraordinary in their endurance, write the story of survival night after night, year after year. And as we step back, as the glow of gaslight fades behind us, as the cobblestone streets return to silence, we carry with us a truth. The comforts we enjoy today were bought by generations who endured discomfort, who lived in houses where safety was uncertain, and who survived by weaving caution into every breath of daily life. Now rest in that thought as the Edwardian night deepens and the families within their homes sleep gently, unknowing of the future, but alive in the present, enduring each hidden danger with quiet, steadfast care. The year is 1905, and the world is on the threshold of change. The streets of an Edwardian town are quiet at night, cobblestones damp from the day's rain, catching faint reflections of gas lamps that flicker in the mist. The air is cool, heavy with the smoke of countless chimneys, each one feeding the steady warmth of coal fires that glow in parlors and kitchens. Horse-drawn cabs roll slowly across the square, their wheels clattering against stone, while in the distance a train whistles, its sound swallowed quickly by the fog. The outside world is restless with invention and industry, yet in these hours of night it seems to pause, leaving only the soft hum of a society drifting into slumber. Step with me inside one of these Edwardian homes. The door opens with a creak of brass hinges, polished daily by a maid whose hands are red from soap. The threshold is marked by a mat woven thick with bristles, its edges worn from the passing of countless shoes. Beyond it, the hallway glows with the amber hue of a gas lamp fixed high upon the wall. Its light trembles slightly, shifting shadows across the wallpaper. The wallpaper itself is rich, patterned with curling leaves and blossoms in shades of deep green and gold. It has the appearance of elegance, chosen proudly by the mistress of the house, though hidden in its pigments lies a danger no one speaks of. The air smells of coal smoke, mingled with the faint tang of varnish from the polished wood. The floorboards beneath the carpet creak as the family moves about, voices muffled, warm, and content. A father hangs his hat upon a stand, removes his heavy overcoat, and steps into the parlor. The fire crackles there, coals glowing in their iron grate, filling the room with a heat that seeps into the bones. The children sit close to the hearth, cheeks pink with warmth, their shadows long and restless against the walls. They whisper to one another, giggling softly, their laughter a song against the backdrop of hissing lamps and ticking clocks. The Edwardian home is a portrait of progress. It is a stage where tradition and modernity meet, where objects once unimaginable are now commonplace. Gas lamps burn in the halls, bringing steady light into rooms once dependent upon candles that sputtered in drafts. Iron stoves keep the chill at bay, replacing the smoky, uneven heat of open hearths. Wallpapers in bold patterns dress the walls in fashion, while carpets thick as moss cushion the floor. Each object promises comfort, safety, advancement, yet woven into each of these marvels is risk, often invisible, often silent, and often deadly. But families do not live in constant fear. Instead, they learn rituals of survival. A mother checks each gas tap before bed, turning it firmly, for she has heard of neighbors overcome in their sleep by fumes they never noticed. A father opens a window, just a crack, no matter how cold the air, for a whisper of fresh air is better than the risk of suffocation. Children know not to touch the flames of the stove, not to wander too close to the iron kettle that spits steam upon the range. Habits like these are not luxuries but necessities, woven into daily life as naturally as eating or sleeping. Survival is not chance, it is care repeated until it becomes instinct. Outside, other homes mirror the same rituals. In a narrow terraced house, a working man returns from the factory, soot clinging to his collar. His wife tends to a small coal fire that heats both the kettle and the single room where the family gathers. The children, barefoot, huddle close, their coughs softened only by the warmth. Their wallpaper, though faded, gleams faintly green in the lamplight, its pigment beautiful yet toxic. They do not know the danger fully, but they live with its effects. Skin rashes, coughs, strange fevers that doctors attribute to weak constitutions rather than poisoned walls. Still, life continues, meals are eaten, stories told, prayers whispered. The dangers become part of the rhythm of existence, endured because there is no alternative. In a grander townhouse across the city, gas lamps glow against silk curtains, their hiss a background to the laughter of guests gathered for an evening of cards. A maid slips quietly from room to room, checking lamps, trimming wicks, carrying trays. She knows the risk of neglect, for she has heard stories whispered in the servants' hall. stories of households gone silent, their inhabitants never waking. She takes her duties seriously, for caution is her only safeguard. Upstairs, the mistress of the house shows her friends the latest addition, an electric lamp, its glow whiter, steadier than gas. It seems miraculous, almost divine. Yet few know that the wires threaded through the walls are crude, their insulation thin, their risk of fire real. Progress comes with sparks as well as light. Everywhere, the Edwardian family walks a thin line between wonder and worry. Coal warms their homes but blackens their lungs. Gas brightens their evenings but steals their breath. Wallpapers delight the eye but poison the blood. Medicines soothe pain but carry within them opium and chloroform. Toys painted in bright colors amuse children but chip away with flakes of lead. Danger is not a rare visitor. It is a constant presence, dressed in beauty, disguised as comfort. Yet despite these risks, the Edwardians endure with remarkable resilience. They are not blind to danger, but they accept it as the cost of modern life. They adapt, they teach their children, they develop small, careful habits. They speak of accidents as warnings, turning misfortune into lessons. And in doing so, they survive. Their world is one of balance, where progress and peril move hand in hand, and where families, through watchfulness and care, learn to live in harmony with both. As the evening deepens, the family settles. The father reads a newspaper, his eyes squinting against the lamplight. He turns the pages slowly, pausing to mutter about politics, industry, or the newest marvel of invention. The mother sews, her fingers deftly guiding the needle, the fabric catching the glow of the lamp. The children grow drowsy, their voices fading, their heads resting against one another. The fire dims to embers, its heat softer, its crackle a lullaby, and the house, though filled with unseen dangers, becomes a cradle of rest. Step further into the night. Outside, the streets fall silent. The glow of lamps marks the presence of life, but the city itself sleeps. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, spreading a haze across the rooftops. The sound of hooves fades, replaced by the quiet creak of wood settling in the cool air. The world holds its breath, and within each home, families close their eyes, trusting their rituals, trusting their caution, trusting that dawn will come. This is the heart of the Edwardian night, a world filled with marvels and menaces, where families live not in ignorance but in careful balance. Each invention carries risk, each comfort a shadow. But survival is not only possible, it is certain when lived with vigilance, with care, and with quiet resilience. And so, as you rest tonight, let the glow of Edwardian gaslight flicker in your imagination. Picture the warm parlor, the whisper of children, the soft crackle of coal. Remember the families who lived in such homes, who endured the hidden dangers of their time with grace and steadiness. Their survival paved the way for ours. Their caution built the safety we now take for granted. And in their endurance there is a lesson, that progress is never free of risk, but that life with care continues. Now close your eyes and let the Edwardian night settle around you. The lamps dim, the fire softens, and the city falls into silence. Sleep gently as they did, cautious yet hopeful, and trust that morning will always follow. The Edwardian home glows softly under the light of gas. Step into an evening in 1905, and you will notice how different the world feels compared to the centuries before. Candles once ruled the night, their small flames trembling in every draught, their wax dripping down in uneven rivers, their light too weak to fill more than a circle of space. Oil lamps followed, smoky and stubborn, their wicks needing constant trimming, their fuel scenting the air with heaviness. But now, in the age of Edward Roman VII, gaslight reigns, and for a time it seems as though the sun itself has been captured and brought into the home. Imagine a parlor lit by these lamps. The walls glow golden, the brass fittings gleam, and the family gathers without straining their eyes against the gloom. A father can read his newspaper without squinting, the mother can sew late into the night, and children can play games well past the setting of the sun. It is as though the day has been stretched, the hours of evening expanded, the possibilities multiplied. This was the promise of Gaslight, to conquer the dark, to extend the usefulness of time, to make the home not only warmer but brighter. But beneath this marvel lay a quiet and deadly truth. The lamps hiss faintly, and with that hiss comes more than light. Carbon monoxide drifts invisibly into the air, odorless, tasteless, unseen. A valve left slightly open can fill a room with fumes that rob the blood of oxygen, lulling the unsuspecting into a sleep from which they may never rise. Families heard stories, whispered between neighbors, of households found lifeless in the morning, faces pale, windows shut tight, victims of the very marvel meant to improve their lives. And yet, the families did not turn away from Gaslight. They could not. It was too useful, too transformative, too deeply woven into the rhythm of their evenings. Instead, they adapted. They created rituals of survival, small gestures repeated night after night until they became instinct. Mothers checked each lamp before bed, turning the valves with practiced care. Fathers cracked windows, no matter how cold the wind, allowing a breath of fresh air to mingle with the glow. Children learned quickly not to tamper with the fixtures, not to touch the fragile mantles, not to play near the flames. Survival became a pattern of habits, simple but vital, passed down in whispers like family secrets. Gaslight also carried another danger, fire, the very thing that brightened rooms could, in an instant, set them ablaze. A curtain brushed too close, a paper held too near, a child's careless reach. These could transform a calm evening into catastrophe. In towns across Britain, newspapers told of houses reduced to ashes, the flames fed not by accident alone but by invention itself. Yet again, families learned to guard against it. Heavy drapes were pinned back, tables arranged carefully, children warned sternly. Each precaution was an invisible shield woven from vigilance. Walk with me now into different homes, each lit by the same glow, each carrying the same quiet risk. In a narrow terrace, a working man sits with his family. His hands are blackened from a day at the factory, his shoulders stooped, his lungs heavy with dust. The room is small, the wallpaper faded, the furniture plain, yet the gas lamp above their heads casts a glow that feels almost luxurious. His children read from their primers, their voices halting but hopeful, their faces illuminated by light their grandparents never knew. The wife knits, her fingers moving steadily, the needles catching the light like silver flashes. It is a moment of peace, of simple happiness, and yet she will rise before bed, carefully check the lamp, and open the window just enough to let in the night air. She has heard the stories, too. She knows that survival depends on remembering. In a townhouse of greater wealth, gaslight glows from chandeliers. The parlor is filled with guests, their laughter mingling with the hiss of flames. The host demonstrates proudly, turning a valve here, adjusting a mantle there, showing off the brilliance of modern light. A maid moves quietly in the background, carrying trays of tea, her eyes flicking often to the lamps. She has been told to watch them, to keep the drapes well away, to make sure no one forgets them burning when the evening ends. For in the servants' quarters, she has heard tales of other households undone, of grand homes gutted in hours. She knows that behind the glamour lies the constant need for vigilance. And in the great houses of the countryside, gaslight spreads through halls and dining rooms, flickering across polished silver and gilt frames. Here, too, the dangers lurk. Servants whisper of near misses, of pipes leaking silently, of air grown thick and heavy in unused rooms. They know the balance of marvel and menace better than anyone, for it is their duty to maintain it. They trim the lamps, clean the fittings, check the valves. all while moving quietly, invisibly, their caution keeping entire households alive. For the Edwardian family, Gaslight was both gift and gamble. It brought safety from the dark, but it carried with it the possibility of death in sleep, of flames in silence, of tragedy unannounced, and yet they did not reject it. Instead, they accepted the balance, trusting their habits, trusting their care, and trusting that progress demanded risk. Listen now to the sounds of such an evening: the hiss of gas in the mantle, the tick of the clock on the mantelpiece, the rustle of pages turned, the quiet hum of conversation. Outside, the world is wrapped in darkness, but within there is light. Families sit together, comforted, cautious, enduring. The dangers are real, but so is the resilience. And this resilience, quiet and steadfast, is what defines them. As the evening wears on, the lamps grow dimmer. One by one, they are turned off, their hiss silenced, their glow fading to darkness. A window is opened, just slightly, letting in the cool night air. The children are led upstairs, tucked into beds warmed by blankets and hot bricks. The father makes his rounds, checking each lamp again, ensuring that none has been left to whisper danger into the night. And then, at last, the family sleeps. The house, for all its risks, holds them safe. It is not safety born of certainty, but of caution, of small rituals repeated faithfully. And as dawn approaches, as the light of the sun returns, the family rises once more. They have survived another night, another dance with the hidden dangers of invention. They live not because progress is kind, but because they are careful. And so the story of Gaslight is not only the story of invention, it is the story of adaptation, of families who learned to survive in a world where marvel and menace were intertwined. It is the story of a society that moved forward not blindly, but cautiously, step by step, lamp by lamp, night by night. Close your eyes now, and imagine the glow of Edwardian gaslight fading into the quiet of sleep. Hear the faint hiss, feel the warmth, sense the balance of wonder and risk, and let the resilience of those families, their habits, their caution, and their care guide you gently into rest. Coal was the heartbeat of the Edwardian home. Step back into the year 1905, and you will find it everywhere, heaped in cellars, stacked in scuttles, clinging to the clothes of men who carried it through the streets. The smell of coal smoke hung thick in the air, so constant that people no longer noticed it. It darkened the skies of cities, left a film of soot on window ledges, and settled into the fabric of life itself. To the Edwardian family, coal was not just fuel, it was survival. Walk with me into a parlor on a cold winter's night. The fire glows in the grate, its coals red and alive, sending up sparks that leap and vanish into the chimney. The iron fender stands guard, polished bright, its bars warming the hands of children who press close. The heat rolls through the room, driving back the chill that seeps through cracks in the walls, softening the air until it seems almost gentle. The father sits in his chair, boots stretched toward the fire, while the mother knits in the glow. The children play at his feet, safe in the circle of warmth. Coal has turned the room into a sanctuary, but this sanctuary was never without danger. Coal burned hot, and it burned long, but it was greedy. It demanded constant feeding, constant tending. Ashes built up quickly, choking the fire unless they were cleared. Chimneys grew coated with soot, ready to ignite into roaring flames if left untended. Sparks leapt unpredictably, setting rugs or curtains ablaze in an instant, and smoke, thick, black, and heavy, was never far away, creeping back into rooms when the draft failed, coating lungs with every breath. For Edwardian families, the coal fire was both comfort and threat, its gifts balanced against its risks. Children learned this balance early. They were taught to keep their distance, to respect the glowing embers, to fear the sudden hiss of escaping steam when a kettle boiled too long upon the stove. Many did not escape unscathed. Burns were common, small hands scarred by brief contact with iron or coal. Yet even these accidents became lessons, reminders that survival meant respect. Mothers watched closely, fathers warned sternly, and the fire was treated as both servant and master. Every day began with the same ritual, the tending of the fire. At dawn, before the household stirred, someone rose to clear the grate. Ashes were shoveled into scuttles, carried out to bins, their fine dust rising into the air and settling on hair and skin. The grate was cleaned, the coals arranged, the kindling lit. Only when the fire roared again could the day begin in earnest, for in the Edwardian home, warmth was not guaranteed. It was earned, hour, by the constant labor of tending. Servants bore the brunt of this work in wealthy households. Maids moved from room to room, their arms aching from scuttles of coal, their aprons gray with soot. They knew the rhythms intimately, how much coal to add, how often to rake, when to leave the draft open, when to close it. Their labor was invisible yet vital, for without it the grand rooms of the house would fall into cold silence. In humbler homes, the work fell to mothers and older children, who rose in the dim light to coax reluctant fires into life. The crackle of kindling and the sigh of coal catching flame were the music of every Edwardian morning. The dangers extended beyond the home. In cities, the air itself was thick with smoke from countless chimneys. London, Manchester, Birmingham, all lay beneath blankets of soot. The sun shone dimmer, the sky seemed always gray, and the very air carried the mark of coal. Doctors saw the effects in children's coughs, in lungs weakened long before their time, in illnesses that clung stubbornly through the winters. Yet coal remained because it had to. There was no other way to keep warm, no other way to cook, no other way to live. Survival required acceptance, and so families adapted. Chimneys were swept regularly, sometimes by small boys who climbed into their narrow throats, scraping soot with hands and brushes until their lungs burned. Hearths were guarded with heavy screens, iron barriers that kept sparks from reaching carpets. Ashes were cleared daily, not just for cleanliness, but for safety. Fires were never left untended for long. Every action, every habit, became a shield against disaster. Listen now to the sound of an Edwardian evening by the fire. The crackle of coals shifting, the hiss of a kettle, the soft scraping of poker against iron. The children murmur drowsily, the father's chair creaks as he leans back, the mother's knitting needles click softly in rhythm with the clock. Outside, the night is cold and damp, but inside there is warmth. It is a fragile warmth, built from labor, guarded by caution, but it is warmth nonetheless. Coal shaped not just the home but the very culture of the Edwardian world. Families gathered around the fire as naturally as we gather around screens today. It was the center of the home, the point of conversation, the stage for stories, songs, and quiet reflection. Life revolved around its glow, and yet always in the background there was the knowledge that this comfort could turn in an instant. A chimney fire, a sudden spark, a breath too heavy with smoke, all could transform safety into peril. Even wealth could not fully shield against it. In grand townhouses, richly carpeted and draped, fires still roared unexpectedly, consuming entire rooms. In country estates, where coal was abundant and fireplaces many, smoke still curled into bedrooms, choking those who slept. In humble cottages, where families huddled close to single grates, sparks still leapt to claim what little they owned. The danger was democratic, striking rich and poor alike. The only defense was vigilance, and so vigilance became a way of life. Families developed routines as natural as breathing. The fire was banked carefully before bed, coals arranged so they would smolder through the night without roaring too high. The draft was checked, the fender secured, the room aired with a brief opening of the door. Children were warned again, reminded of burns past, told to keep clear. Each step, small in itself, formed part of a larger ritual of survival. Coal also carried unseen dangers. Its smoke filled lungs with fine particles. Its soot settled invisibly into walls, curtains, and lungs alike. Children grew with persistent coughs, their skin marked by the residue of fuel. Yet to Edwardian families, this was simply life. Illness was attributed to weak constitutions, to weather, to fate, not always to the very fuel that warmed them. And still, they endured because endurance was the only choice. Picture now an Edwardian night deep in winter. Outside, frost glitters on cobblestones, windows are rimmed with ice, and the air bites sharp and cruel. Inside, the fire glows, casting its light across the room, turning faces soft with warmth. The family gathers close, finding comfort in one another as much as in the heat. The father tells a story, the mother listens with a smile, the children drift towards sleep. The fire, dangerous though it may be, is also life itself. It is the thread that binds the family together, the heart that beats within the home, and as the night grows late, the rituals return. The fire is banked, the grate secured, the coals left to smolder. The family climbs the stairs, the warmth fading with each step, the bedrooms colder, sharper. They wrap themselves in heavy blankets, hot bricks tucked at their feet, trusting the fire below to last the night. It is a trust born not of certainty but of habit, of care, of survival, and with this trust they sleep. Coal, then, was not merely a fuel, it was a companion, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, always demanding. It asked for labor, for respect, for vigilance. It gave warmth, comfort, and life, but it also carried within it the seeds of danger. And Edwardian families, in their wisdom, learned to balance both. They endured, they adapted, they survived. So let the sound of crackling coals linger in your imagination as you drift into rest. Picture the glow, feel the warmth, sense the balance of danger and comfort. And remember the families who lived in such homes, who tended their fires with care, who taught their children the rituals of survival. Their endurance is the reason we can speak of them now. Their resilience, quiet and steadfast, is a lesson that lingers still. Close your eyes and let the warmth of the Edwardian fire carry you into gentle sleep. The danger is real, but so is the care, and in that care lies peace. The Edwardian home was a place of beauty as much as of function. Families took pride in their rooms, not only for comfort, but for appearance, for the sense that the home reflected who they were and what they hoped to be. When a guest entered a parlor, the first impression mattered. The chairs and carpets told part of the story, the fireplace another, but it was the walls that set the stage. Wallpaper, patterned and colored with care, was more than decoration. It was a statement. And in the Edwardian years, that statement carried a beauty so vivid, so arresting, that few stopped to wonder whether it carried danger. Imagine walking into an Edwardian parlor, bathed in the soft glow of lamplight. The walls are alive with color, deep greens wind in curling vines, flowers bloom in pale yellows and rich purples, delicate patterns weave across the room. The wallpaper seems almost to breathe with nature itself, as if the garden outside had been invited indoors. Visitors remarked on its richness, children marveled at its detail, mothers polished and dusted it with pride. It was the very image of refinement, of progress, of modern living, but hidden within those colors was a poison. Many of the richest greens and most luminous shades were made not with harmless dyes, but with arsenic pigments, compounds of copper and arsenic that gave them their brilliance. Shields green, Paris green, names that hinted at elegance, were in truth substances of death. They flaked invisibly into the air, clung to hands and clothing, and settled into lungs with each breath. Yet families who lived within those walls rarely suspected the danger until illness began to creep upon them. Consider the daily life of such a family. A child plays near the wall, tracing fingers over patterns of leaves, pressing hands against the paper as children always will. The pigment transfers unnoticed, tiny grains left on skin, later carried to the mouth. A mother wipes the wall with a damp cloth to remove soot or dust, her fingers absorbing what the cloth cannot hold back. The air itself carries fragments, loosened by heat, by damp, by time, floating unseen yet ever present. Slowly, insidiously, the poison enters the body. The effects were subtle at first: a persistent cough, a weariness that clung despite rest, a rash upon the skin. Families might blame the damp weather, the coal smoke outside, the weakness of constitution. But over time, symptoms worsened: headaches, nausea, strange illnesses that seemed to have no cause. In some homes, pets sickened first, birds dying in their cages, cats fading quietly. Only then did suspicion fall upon the very walls that surrounded them. Doctors began to notice. By the late 19th century, whispers of danger had already spread, but by Edwardian times, the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Medical journals carried cases of children poisoned in nurseries, of families weakened in drawing rooms, of servants sickened in grand houses where the walls themselves betrayed them. Yet even with warnings, the allure of beauty was strong. Many continued to choose such wallpapers, their rich colors too tempting to abandon, their dangers too invisible to fully believe, and so survival became a quiet art of adaptation. Families who suspected danger began to air their rooms more often, windows cracked open to let in drafts, even in the chill of winter. Mothers scrubbed their walls less, wary of stirring up what clung there. Some stripped paper away entirely, leaving bare plaster rather than risk their children's health. In wealthier homes, decorators were pressed to choose safer colors, paler shades less likely to contain arsenic. In humbler cottages, where old rolls of wallpaper were used until they disintegrated, families relied on fresh air and strong constitutions to see them through. The tragedy was that beauty itself had become the threat. The very colors meant to bring joy and refinement carried sickness in their depths. Yet families endured, because endurance was what life demanded. They learned to live with caution, to trust their senses when illness grew worse in certain rooms, to act when others still doubted. Their survival was not born of certainty, but of instinct, of the slow recognition that sometimes what gleamed most brightly could also harm most deeply. Picture again that Edwardian parlor. The fire glows in the grate, the family gathers close, the wallpaper gleams around them. To the eye, it is perfection, rich, inviting, alive with color. To the body, it is a danger, slow and invisible, and yet within that tension, families lived. They chose beauty, but they also chose resilience. They opened windows, they cleaned carefully, they watched their children with sharper eyes. They whispered of stories they had heard, of neighbors who had sickened, of doctors who warned, and they made their own small adjustments. This is the essence of survival in the Edwardian age, not the elimination of danger, but the quiet balancing of it. Families could not remove every threat from their homes, but they could adapt, endure, and pass on their wisdom. And so they did. In the end, the arsenic wallpapers faded from fashion, replaced by safer pigments, their dangers consigned to memory. But for those who lived among them, survival was not a matter of luck. It was a matter of attentiveness, of resilience, of the courage to act even when others did not see. So as you drift tonight into sleep, imagine those walls, bright with flowers, rich with vines, alive with color. Imagine the families who lived within them, who breathed their beauty and bore their danger, who adapted quietly, patiently, faithfully. And let their endurance remind you that survival is not only about strength, but about wisdom, vigilance, and the quiet courage to live carefully in a world that is never free from risk. And now, as the firelight fades, as the colors dim, as the dangers recede into history, let your own eyes close. Let the hush of the Edwardian home surround you, gentle and safe, for you have learned their lessons, and their resilience lives on in you. Electricity arrived in the Edwardian home like a visitor from another world. For centuries, households had relied on fire, on flame, on the soft flicker of candles and the hiss of gaslight. Light was always alive, always burning, always demanding fuel. And then, suddenly, here was a new light, clean, steady, unblinking. It glowed with no smoke, no soot, no flame. To those who first encountered it, electricity seemed like magic itself. A switch was pressed, and the room came alive. Darkness vanished at command. It was not merely convenience. It was power reshaping the rhythms of life. But the magic was not without its shadows. The wires that carried electricity were thin, fragile things, often poorly insulated, hidden in walls not built to contain them. A frayed cord could spark silently, a circuit could overload, a fuse could fail. Fires began in an instant, roaring to life without warning, more deadly than any candle or coal. Families who welcomed electricity into their homes did so with awe, but also with unease. They admired its brilliance, yet mistrusted its silence. Imagine the parlor of an Edwardian townhouse where electricity has just been installed. A single bulb glows overhead, its glass fragile, its light steady and white compared to the golden flicker of gas. The family gathers beneath it, marveling at its constancy, remarking on how clearly they can see, how the shadows retreat to corners. Yet even as they admire it, they speak in hushed tones of stories heard elsewhere, of wires that smoldered unseen, of houses reduced to ash, of lives lost in the blaze. The very thing that brought light also carried fire within it. And so they lived with both wonder and wariness. Caution became their shield. Some families refused to let the wires run at night, preferring to switch off the current and return to their trusted gas lamps or candles before bed. Others limited themselves to a single bulb in the most used room, reluctant to risk the entire house. Electricians were called frequently, their work inspected closely, their reliability questioned. Families balanced modernity with suspicion, embracing progress slowly, step by step, never fully surrendering to trust. Yet electricity was not the only hidden danger within Edwardian walls. Even in homes without wires, other threats lay quietly in the objects of daily life. Toys, for instance, brought joy to children but carried poisons of their own. Brightly painted soldiers, dolls, and blocks were often coated in lead-based paints. The colors were vivid and durable, but when chipped beneath eager teeth or worn beneath small hands, they left behind dust and flakes that entered the body. Parents saw their children sicken, their energy fade, yet few connected the decline with the very toys meant to delight them. In dressing rooms, curling irons glowed red above open flames. Women, eager for fashionable waves and ringlets, heated the irons until they hissed, then pressed them to hair. A single slip burned scalp or skin, leaving scars that lasted. Beauty demanded risk, and families accepted it as the price of elegance. Even medicine, meant to heal, carried hidden perils. Bottles lined on shelves in kitchens and bedrooms promised relief for every ailment, but their ingredients were potent and often dangerous. Laudanum, rich with opium, was given freely to soothe pain or calm restless children. Chloroform and ether were sold over counters, their dangers scarcely understood. Families trusted these remedies, for they came with the authority of science and the promise of progress. But many discovered too late that the cure could be as dangerous as the illness itself. Survival, once again, came through vigilance. Mothers locked certain bottles away, warned their children sternly not to touch diluted doses until they were barely more than water. Fathers insisted on moderation, reminded their households of neighbors who had suffered from too much trust in modern cures. And so, even as they welcomed these marvels, families learned to guard themselves. The Edwardian home was thus a paradox. It was filled with wonders, Electric light, painted toys, curling irons, bottled medicines, that promised ease, beauty, and relief. Yet each carried dangers hidden within. Families could not abandon them, for they were too useful, too alluring, too much a part of progress. But they could adapt, teaching caution, building habits, passing on quiet wisdom. Children learned not to gnaw at toys. Women learned to handle irons with care. Households learned to store medicines safely. Even electricity, once feared, became manageable through vigilance. Picture again the evening in that Edwardian home. The electric bulb glows softly overhead, its light steady, its hum barely heard. In the nursery, children play with painted toys, watched carefully by their mother. In the bedroom, a curling iron rests cooling after its use, set aside with caution. On a shelf, bottles of medicine wait, their labels promising comfort, their stoppers sealed tight. Around it all, there is a sense of balance, a balance between marvel and menace, between progress and prudence. And as night falls, the rituals of safety return. The switches are turned off, the wires left silent, the toys are gathered away, the curling iron cooled fully, the medicine cabinet locked. Family climbs into bed, knowing that they live surrounded by wonders and by risks, but also knowing that they have done what they can. Their survival rests not on chance, but on the daily habits of care they have built. It is in this quiet vigilance that we find the strength of Edwardian families. They did not reject progress, nor did they embrace it blindly. They walked a careful path between, guided by instinct, by caution, by the shared stories of neighbors and friends. They lived with danger, but they lived fully, finding joy in the very things that threatened them, while never forgetting the need for respect. So, as you drift now toward sleep, imagine the glow of an Edwardian bulb, steady and warm. Imagine the laughter of children, the quiet sigh of a mother at rest, the cautious wisdom that kept them safe. Let their balance be your comfort, the reminder that even in a world filled with unseen dangers, peace can be found through care, vigilance, and trust in one another. And as the night deepens, as the last lights fade, rest knowing that the resilience of those families lives on in you. They survived the marvels and the menaces of their time, and their lessons endure still. The Edwardian family lived in a world balanced on the edge of marvel and menace. Their homes, at first glance, seemed havens of progress. Warm fires in polished grates, bright colors adorning walls, new lights that glowed without flame, toys that delighted children, medicines that promised relief. To us, these things might appear charming, even quaint, wrapped in the elegance of a vanished era. Yet to those who lived within them, they were not merely ornaments of history. They were daily companions carrying both blessing and risk. Imagine once more the Edwardian home. Its front door opens onto a hallway where the faint smell of coal lingers. Boots rest by the mat, their leather dusted with soot. Beyond lies the parlor, where wallpaper blooms with floral patterns and the fire glows in the grate. A lamp may burn above, perhaps gas, hissing faintly, or perhaps one of the new electric bulbs, steady and bright. On the hearth, children's toys are scattered, their paint gleaming in the light. In the kitchen, bottles line the shelves, their labels promising cure and comfort. To the Edwardian eye, this is a home of progress, of comfort, of pride. Yet we, with the knowledge of hindsight, see the shadows behind each marvel. Gaslight, so much brighter than candle or oil, carried invisible fumes that could steal the breath of a sleeping household. Coal, the very heart of warmth, sent smoke curling into lungs and sparks leaping into flames. Wallpaper, alive with green and gold, carried arsenic that crept into bodies slowly, silently. Electricity, the marvel of a new century, sparked behind thin wires, waiting for a chance to burn. Toys brought joy but carried lead. Curling irons promised beauty but seared skin. Medicines soothed pain but hid dangers of their own. It would seem almost impossible that families could live safely among such threats. And yet they did. They not only survived, they thrived, they laughed, they played, they grew, they dreamed. Their homes were filled not only with dangers, but with love, with resilience, with the quiet determination to make life not only possible, but joyful. How did they endure? Through vigilance, through habit, through wisdom born of experience. The Edwardian family learned to adapt, to treat every marvel with respect. They opened windows to let fresh air chase away fumes. They cleared ashes daily, scrubbed chimneys, and guarded hearths with iron screens. They watched their children carefully, warned them against walls and toys and fires. They stored medicines safely, used them cautiously, and spoke to neighbors of what they had seen. They did not abandon progress, but they did not surrender blindly to it either. Instead, they walked a careful path, step by step, guided by both hope and caution. This balance shaped not only their survival, but their spirit. The Edwardian home became a place where danger was always present, yet where care transformed danger into safety. It became a place where every member of the family shared in the rituals of resilience. Children learning early to respect fire, mothers guiding hands away from bright walls, fathers reminding all to treat new inventions with care. Survival was not the work of one, but of all, a shared labor woven into the fabric of daily life. And through this shared vigilance, families discovered something deeper. They discovered that life, fragile though it may be, can flourish even among risks. They discovered that joy is not the absence of danger, but the triumph of love and care over it. They discovered that a home is not made safe by walls or inventions, but by the attentiveness of those who dwell within it. Picture now the Edwardian evening one last time. The fire glows low in the grate, banked carefully for the night. The lamp is dimmed, whether gas or electric, its light softened. The wallpaper shines faintly, its colors muted in the shadows. Toys lie abandoned where small hands left them, their colors dulled in the half-light. Upstairs, medicines rest untouched, sealed away. The family climbs into bed, wrapping themselves against the chill. They have done all they can. They have tended, guarded, prepared, and now in the quiet of night they trust. Trust in their vigilance, trust in one another, trust that morning will come. This trust was the heart of their survival. For no matter how careful, no matter how wise, life could never be made free of risk. Yet they did not live in fear. They lived in balance, acknowledging danger, respecting it, and choosing life nonetheless. And in this balance they found peace. We who look back upon their world might marvel at how they endured. We who live in homes lit safely, heated cleanly, painted harmlessly, might struggle to imagine living with such hazards. Yet perhaps there is something in their vigilance that we would do well to remember. For though our dangers have changed, the need for care has not. Though our homes may be safer, life itself remains fragile. The lesson of the Edwardian family is not only about the dangers they faced, but about the spirit with which they faced them. They teach us that survival is not only about invention, but about adaptation. Not only about progress, but about prudence. Not only about strength, but about love expressed through watchfulness and care. Their resilience whispers to us across the years, reminding us that peace is found not in the absence of threats, but in the presence of wisdom. So let this reflection guide you as you rest. Imagine the Edwardian family, safe in their beds, their home alive with quiet dangers, yet calmed by the habits of survival. Imagine their dreams, their hopes, their simple joys. Let their endurance soothe you, for it tells us that even in a world filled with risks, life can be gentle, home can be safe, and night can bring peace. Now let the sounds of their world fade, the crackle of coal, the hiss of gas, the hum of wires, the laughter of children, all grow distant. In their place there is only quiet, the quiet they trusted, the quiet in which they rested, the quiet in which we too may rest. Close your eyes and let their lessons linger in your heart. For the Edwardian family survived the deadliest inventions not by fear, but by care. And in that care there is healing, there is hope, and there is rest. Sleep now as they once did. Sleep in the knowledge that danger can be met with vigilance, that fragility can be met with love, and that night can always be met with peace. Now, let your eyes grow heavy, let your thoughts drift away, and rest knowing you are safe. Sleep well, good night. And before you go, if you enjoyed this calm journey into the past, please like, share, and subscribe for more sleepy history videos.